Hello, my name is Father Timothy Tighe, and this is our 225th segment of our journey of faith in the light of the cross, and I thank you so much for joining us. We look up on our screen and we see the theme for this segment. John 18:1-27 emphasizes the difference in response between Jesus, I am one with the Father and will drink of the cup, and Peter's, I am not at one, but still naked in the dark cold of Adam's sin. I cannot yet drink the Father's cup. We go on to our next screen and we read 18:1. After his prayer, Jesus went with his disciples across the Kidron Valley to a garden. Since spread out of a garden, the Garden of Eden, and since redemption would spread out from the garden of Jesus' prayer, Gethsemane. Verse 2. Judas knew the place, for Jesus often met there with his disciples. Judas took guards of the high priest and the Pharisees and went to the garden with lanterns and torches and weapons. They expected a dark struggle with Jesus' disciples who might have had swords like Peter. We go on to our next screen and we read, verse 4. Jesus, knowing that all of this was coming at him, went to them and said, Whom do you seek? They answered, Jesus the Nazarene. Jesus said, I am, ego eimi in Greek. When he said, I am, they backed away and fell. Recall, Jesus thanked his Father in 17:2 in the prayer for glorifying him by giving him all exousia, authority, right, and power. Jesus' words, ego eimi, Yahweh in Hebrew, rang out with such power and authority that the Judean guards backed away and fell on the ground as if bowing in worship. They did know God's name in both Hebrew and Greek, so they made the association Jesus wanted them to hear. We go on to our next screen and we read, Jesus fearlessly repeats his question. Jesus asked again, Whom do you seek? They said, Jesus the Nazarene. Jesus said, I am. Jesus repeats ego eimi 3 times. 8b, if you seek me, let these go. This fulfilled the words, I have not lost any of those that you gave me. Jesus surrendered to the Father's will in faith that the Father would redeem, turn the curse into a blessing, the world's bitter cup, the curse the world gives us. Peter felt abandoned with his life unraveling. Could he pick up the pieces of his fishing business after 3 years on the road with Jesus? We go to our next screen and we read 10. So Simon Peter drew his sword and cut off the right ear of Malchus, the high priest's slave. Jesus said, Put your sword in its sheath. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me? This is the center of our teaching. Main teaching of John 18:1-27. Shall I not drink the cup the Father has given me? Now note also, Peter carries a weapon. Now we go to verse 12. The guards took Jesus to Annas, the father-in-law of Caiaphas, the high priest. What's important here, he is the one who said, it was better that one man die than all the people. So this goes together with Jesus accepting the cup. Simon Peter followed with a disciple who knew the high priests. So they entered with Jesus. Most likely this is Mark, not John, for Mark grew up in Jerusalem, a wealthy family who knew the high priest. John was from Galilee, and he doesn't seem to be from a high priestly family. So it was probably Mark. We go on to our next screen and we read, verse 17. The maid at the gate said to Peter, Are you not one of this man's disciples? And Peter said, I am not, ukemi. Jesus said, I am, ego eimi. Peter said, I am not, ukemi. Like Adam, Peter felt ashamed and naked, so he hid in the dark cold, for he did not know who he was or to whom he belonged. Remember, we covered that in previous segments. 18, slaves and guards stood around a charcoal fire Peter stood with them, trying to warm himself, for it was cold. Now, the charcoal fire here is very important because at the end of John's gospel, Peter will recommit himself to Jesus on the Sea of Galilee around the charcoal fire. We go on to our next screen and we read 19. The high priest asked about Jesus' teachings. Jesus answered, I have spoken openly to the world. I taught in synagogues or the temple. I said nothing in secret. Ask those who heard what I said. They know. A God struck Jesus and said, is this any way to answer the high priest? Jesus answered, if I spoke wrongly, testify to the wrong. But if I spoke rightly, why do you strike me? We go on to our next screen and we read, verse 24, Annas then sent him bound to Caiaphas. Jesus is bound but spiritually free. As Peter stood keeping warm, they said, are you not one of his disciples? He denied it and said, I am not. Uke me, a second time. Peter is free. He's not bound up, but he's spiritually dead at this time in his life. Verse 26, a relative of Malchus said, didn't I see you in the garden with him? Peter denied it a third time. Immediately a cock crowed. Now it's very important that John did not say uke me here the third time. He was giving Peter grace for his conversion. John's original hearers of his Greek gospel heard the emphasis on I am a me versus I am not. Uke me. No, John did not use ego eimi the third time, but used the word denied Jesus. We go on to our next screen and we read, modern translations do not help us hear I am versus I am not. Peter and all sinful humans, that's all of us, are unsure who they are and to whom they belong. John's readers were pierced by these words and meditated, who am I? Am I proud to belong to the father of my brother Jesus the Nazarene? Do I pray for the grace to drink the bitter cup the Father asks of me? Or do I back away and feel drained of life in the dark cold as Peter did as he gathered around the charcoal fire? Jesus drank the bitter cup and allowed the Father to redeem it, give the curse value, then poured out his wondrous life-giving love. We go on to our next screen and we read, lastly, it is important to note that Peter and most apostles later received God's grace and in oneness with Jesus and the Father, bravely drank of the cup. Most importantly, Peter and Paul bravely witnessed to the bitter cup of Nero's persecution in 67 AD, and in turn poured out an enormous amount of Jesus' life-giving love. The Father of Jesus did redeem the bitter cup of a sinful world into Jesus' eternal life-giving blood that we drink. The most wondrous love in the history of the world. We go on to our next screen and we read, John's mostly Judean community in 90, this is 23 years after the persecution of Paul and Peter, was aware that John was the last of the apostles and was praying that his believers in Ephesus would accept God's grace and bravely accept the Father's cup. Would they lapse back into the dark cold of sin and drained of life and love like Peter at Jesus' trial? Would they return to Judaism? Or would they bravely drink the cup of being declared dead by the rabbis or their families and pour out in oneness with Jesus his eternal life-giving love on the world's Gentiles? We go on to our next screen and we read, John 18:1-27 emphasizes the difference in response between Jesus' I am one with the Father and will drink of the cup, and Peter's I am not at one, but still naked in the dark cold of Adam's sin. I cannot yet drink the Father's cup. I thank you so much for joining us for this 225th segment of our journey of faith in the light of the cross. Lead me